All right, here is Tuesday, January 10th. I'm going to do try to do a quick recap again. This is the third video. I feel like the other two were long, so I'm going to make this one a little bit quicker. So let's go back to yesterday's plan that I made for today. Remember I said this level right here is important, this line, and so is this line. And how I got those lines, I got them over here on the multi-day. That line right there, why it was important is because that was the previous week's open, right? And the other line, which is right here, the 795, is a mid-level ATR, and you see how they were basically holding this. So anytime you're seeing it hold, then that is that's a strong support. If this would have came back below, or if we would have opened below, then I would short anything. If we stay in above it, you have to go long. You have to be long biased. So with that said, how did today played out? You can see that we did according to plan. We opened up, chopped around first hour, and then we found the trend. And then we went almost all the way to the +1 ATR, and we filled the gap, or got close. So let's go over the chart, and I'll show you that why the first hour sometimes is can be tricky. And if you just have patience and wait, the move actually was there. Really after the first hour, after 9:30, the move was pretty clear of what was going to happen. But you have to be able to look at, say, the bigger picture. That's the hardest thing, is like zooming out and seeing what's going on with the bigger time frame. So let's take a look. When we opened right above the previous day or close. They shot it up, and then they ended up tested the highs. They could not get it over, and then they ended up dropping it. One would have thought, okay, they're going to keep going down, but remember, we're stuck in between, so you need to only enter or exit at the extremes. Anything in between, you can get hurt. I got hurt a little bit in the morning, which then ruined the rest of the afternoon with some of my accounts. So, we all have our faults, but the plan was there. On the bigger time frame, you just had to wait and be patient at certain levels. So here you can see this 5-minute candle closed, but then they scooped it back up that last 5 minutes, and then you see how this 30-minute candle closed as a doji, which means an indecision candle, but it's an indecision candle above this pivot, right? So then they dropped it again, and then that next 5 minutes, really it's the next 10 minutes, they shot it up. And so this candle closing above like this should tell you this is pretty bullish. Eventually, I want to say it's pretty bullish. They're buying it up, and anything can happen, as in they can consolidate and break it, but you have to play the rules, as in now you have to be long biased, and so because we are above the previous day close. And so sure enough, if you waited for the pullback, you get as close as you can, you go long, and then this is what the rest of the afternoon and morning end up doing. And I'll explain why it did that. So you see how right here at 9:30, that's why I said 9:30 is important, they actually came and picked a direction for the trend. So they came above, they're above that 858. And even if you didn't enter right here, really you should be entering here, because this solid candle, but you want to be anticipating this move and then get out and wait, or just if you're in for the bigger picture, then you just risk to back below here for the day, right? If you think that we're just going to keep trending up, then this is probably the low for the day. So what ends up happening, they ended up shooting it up. They closed the 5-minute candle. They consolidated above. Then the new TPO, which you always need to be aware of, is those failed breakout reversals of the 30-minute candles. So what do they end up doing? They retraced all the way back down to the previous open of that candle, and it also coincided with that 860 area. And then you have VWAP, then you also have the EMA. So there's a lot going for it, and that's why this was super critical as support. This was a fast candle and would freak out most people, but you have to remember that this is going to be major support. It was major support yesterday, resistance, now turned into support. So what you do, you go long, and that's your scoop. And what it ended up doing, it never broke back below. If you played the wave, you could have played up here, then as per the rule, you short it, came back down. What do? You go long. But at the end of the day, you can see that this was right here, a consolidation pattern. And yes, this was 10:30. We were below this pivot, right? So a lot of times the rule states we're below a pivot at 10:30. Then you need to target the other. Well, anything can happen, especially on trend days, right? So they technically did break out. They didn't break out of a pivot. They broke out of a major support and resistance. So when at 10:30 we were above here. So if you would have just took off the pivots, then and played technical analysis, then you are above and you should be going long. But again, sometimes it's really hard because we get blinded. So, but at the end of the day, if you would have recognized that they're making lower highs, higher lows, right? They're scooping this up. The moment they break out of it, see how there's a breakout? And yes, it is the high, but again, we're above a pivot. So you have to abide by the rules as you have to go long. If you end up waiting for the retest, you see the retest was at an 84, 16.84. It only had about a 5-point drawdown, and then it reversed and came back up. It wasn't until 12 o'clock, once again, that they actually, they went from here to the fib, which it was about right, but in order for it to get up here during the morning session, they would have needed to cleared it right here. They needed to cleared it, but because they consolidated it here, there wasn't going to be enough momentum for it to be from here to here. So that would have been an afternoon play. So with afternoon, what you have to be aware of is this really, one, faked me out, and I didn't realize what was going on, but it was the liquidity squeeze. So they ended up shooting it up right at 12. I moved this so you can see this bar, but this right here is 12 o'clock. They shot it up, and then in the next 5 minutes, they dropped it. They dropped it hard. 5, then another 5. They dropped it right into the pivot. Again, they retested this pivot, and then that was basically your afternoon session. That was the low. Like, again, when you see a lot of red, if you see a lot of red but you're above a pivot, you just have to trust that it's gonna bounce. Especially it's a new session. You are above a pivot. It's a new TPO for a 4-hour candle, and you have again this trend. Even if I took the Saturday pivot off, you just have to wait. If this would have broke down below, absolutely, you just wait for a retest of here, and then you wait for the reject, and then they would have dropped it all the way probably back down to here. But until then, you have to assume that they're scooping and going higher. So what do? They scooped it, and then they consolidated it, and then they eventually broke it out, and then this was about 1 o'clock. They made the majority of the move and then shot it up all the way up to the pivot. So what do? You get close to the pivot, you sell your position, you short. That would have been another 20-point move right here. But again, with the momentum, and this was 1 o'clock, we still had 2 hours left. I was hoping that they're going to at least come up to the +1 ATR, which would put you right here at this fib. And it's very likely it was going to do that. But again, you cannot be biased. It's so easy to be biased to a direction in which you want it to do. Just take a big chunk of the move and move on with your day. You don't have to hit every single move. But this move up here should be thought of and executed down here. This was your move where when they pulled back into a fib and into this ribbon. This is where you go long. If they are going to break out and keep going, this is the best, because if you end up coming right here, yes, it could keep going, but you see what ended up happening was they ended up doing a failed breakout reversal at a major pivot. And this was the last hour of the day. So last hour of the day, a lot of times they have profit taking. So they end up shooting it up, consolidating it, and then they had this big drop, and then they ended up, see, one would think that this would just be a healthy pullback, Well, if they were going to come up here, the odds are they were going to just hold this and then keep going, right? And they would also ride this ribbon. But because they dropped pretty far, now you have to look at this as a resistance. And so let's look at the Renko chart. You can see that move came up here. So they consolidated right here. They broke it up and out. They came back. This is where you would have entered, and that would have been your entry for that 7,000 area. But then when they consolidated, when they broke this down with speed, you could have got in right here, or even better, if you missed out on this, it came all the way down here. You wait for the retest. It retested, barely had any drawdown, and then that was it. It went all the way from that pivot and came almost down to this pivot, and then they reversed it at the end of the day, the last 10 minutes. You always got to be careful of that last 10 minutes too, because that's where reversal candles can happen. So you can see that they end up breaking this trend, came back up to the pivot, and then they made their way all the way down to VWAP, right? And then they scooped it up last 10 minutes, and they came all the way back up. So yeah, if you look on a 30-minute chart too, see how even that right there looked like a lot of selling. It was a blip, of the bigger picture. Because if you look at a 30-minute chart, you see this ribbon. See how it was just playing into this ribbon, and then right here, and this was your afternoon, came up, they dropped it, and then right here they had VWAP, and they also VWAP, and then you had this important fib. So this was a consolidation breakout, and then you also have the fib, and then you also had this line. So there was a lot going for this for it to continue up. Trends don't break unless there's some big moves. If you had a big candle to bust through here, but that would had to happen earlier on in the day. So anyways, it was a lot. I know this video is a lot, but at the end of the day, it's just having patience and watching the price action and looking for these moves, fake breakouts, reversals, and then look, when this should have kept on going. This was my short right here for the morning. If for any reason this came back above here, you have to then go long, because then you see this is breaking out. So this is almost guaranteed. If this would have came back and broke back below this consolidation breakout, I guarantee you that this would have flushed, and would have flushed hard, because one, needs enough momentum to break through VWAP, but then they would have flushed it, probably came all the way back down here. But until then, you can't fear that they're going to do that. You just have to get in, because this, of course, looks like it's hindsight, but look how long it took. It took 1, 2, 3, 4 30-minute candles, but really this new TPO, this 12 o'clock, 12:30 candle, you could have missed all this and got back in right here. But again, that's if you didn't have the fear, because seeing a lot of red would scare most people. So anyways, that is the day. But at the end of the day, this was a standard move, as in you go from opening all the way to mid pivot. That's a typical day, whether it's this direction or this direction. But you need to pick a direction at some point and just trust that it's gonna make it. There's nothing that was in its way. That's the key. There was nothing. Look at this. There was nothing in its way. So it should have gone all the way. Should have gone all the way. So anyways, until next time.